Hey guys, tonight we begin with a story about loss, loyalty, and barley fields. It's not flashy. There are no plagues, no battles, no talking donkeys. Just two women walking a long, dusty road back to a town that doesn't particularly want them. One of them is bitter, the other is stubborn. And somehow, out of all that grief and grit, we get one of the most quietly beautiful stories in the entire Bible. If you find comfort in slow, thoughtful stories like this, stories that help you unwind and maybe drift off, I'd be honored if you took a moment to subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what we do here. No pressure, just an invitation. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from tonight. I love hearing from you. All right. Let's talk about Ruth and Naomi. Picture it. Moab. Sometime around 1100 BCE, give or take a few decades depending on which scholar you ask. Moab is not Israel. It's the plateau east of the Dead Sea, hot, rocky, and perpetually at odds with its Israelite neighbors. The Moabites worship Chemosh, not Yahweh. They eat differently. They dress differently. They have their own kings, their own laws, their own way of doing things. And into this foreign land comes a small family from Bethlehem. Their names are Elimelech, Naomi, and their two sons, Mahlon and Chilion. They're not diplomats. They're not traders. They're refugees. There's a famine back in Bethlehem. One of those slow, creeping famines where the grain stops growing and people start making hard choices. Elimelech decides the best move is to pack up his family and head east into Moab, where the crops are still coming in. It's a pragmatic decision, also a controversial one, because Moab, remember, is not Israel. Moving there means stepping outside the covenant community. It means your kids will grow up around people who don't know your God, don't share your customs, and definitely don't invite you to their weddings. But hunger has a way of clarifying priorities, so they go. Now, let's pause here and talk about what life in Moab would have actually felt like for this family. Because the text doesn't linger on the details, it just says they went to Moab and stayed there. But think about it. You're Naomi. You've just uprooted your entire life. You're living in a place where the language is slightly different, the food tastes wrong, and the neighbors eye you with polite suspicion. You're the expat family, the outsiders, the people who showed up during a famine and never quite fit in. The house you're living in probably has walls made of sun-baked mud brick, not the limestone of Bethlehem. Mud, which cracks in the heat and smells faintly of clay and old straw when the wind blows through. The floor is packed earth, no tile, no mosaic, just dirt that turns to dust in the dry season and gets slick when it rains. The bed is a mat on a raised platform, straw-filled, scratchy, and home to a rotating cast of insects that you've learned to ignore because what else are you going to do? Complain to the Bronze Age IKEA customer service hotline? There's no running water. You haul it from the communal well every morning, which means you also have to make small talk with the Moabite women who eye you like you're a curiosity. The polite outsider who doesn't quite get the jokes and uses the wrong word for bread. The food is close to what you're used to, but not quite. The lentils taste the same, but the spices are off. The bread is made with a slightly different grain. There's no sense of home in it, just the vague, constant awareness that you are elsewhere. And your sons, they're adapting, because that's what kids do. They pick up the local accent. They make friends with the Moabite boys. They start using Moabite expressions that you don't fully understand. And when they hit marrying age, there are no Israelite girls around. So they marry local. Mahlon marries Ruth. Chilion marries Orpah. And Naomi, for her part, tries to make peace with it. She tells herself it's fine. They're good girls. They're kind. They work hard. It's not what she would have chosen back in Bethlehem. But this isn't Bethlehem. For a while, maybe it even works. Maybe it feels like the start of something stable. Then Elimelech dies. The text doesn't tell us how. Old age maybe. An illness that started as a cough and turned into something worse. Maybe an accident. We don't know. What we know is that one day Naomi has a husband, and the next day she doesn't. And suddenly, everything feels different. Because without Elimelech, she's just a widow, living in a foreign country with 2 married sons and 2 daughters-in-law she's still getting to know. The house feels emptier, the future feels shakier, but at least she still has her boys. At least there's that. Then Mahlon dies, just like that. No warning, no explanation. One day he's fine, and the next day he's not. And Naomi is sitting in that mud brick house with the scratchy straw mat and the cracked walls, staring at the space where her eldest son used to be, and she's thinking, this can't be real, but it is. And then, before she's even processed Mahlon's death, Chilion dies too. Both sons, gone. Within a span of time so short it feels like a cosmic joke. No children, no grandchildren, no heirs. Just Naomi, Ruth and Orpah, sitting in a house in Moab, surrounded by the suffocating weight of loss. Let's sit with that for a second, because this is not just grief. This is catastrophic loss in a world where a woman's security, identity and future are tied almost entirely to the men in her family. No husband means no provider, no income, no voice in legal matters. No sons means no one to care for you when you're old and can't work anymore. No one to speak for you in the village gate. No one to make sure you don't end up begging in the streets. No grandsons means your family line, your name dies with you. It's erased, like you were never here. Naomi is now a childless widow, in her 50s or 60s, living in a country that was never hers to begin with 2 foreign daughters-in-law who have even less security than she does. She wakes up in that mud brick house every morning and thinks, what now? The smell of straw and clay, the silence where her husband's voice used to be, the absence of her son's footsteps. She thinks about the life she used to have in Bethlehem, the life she left behind because of a famine, and she wonders if any of it was worth it. Word reaches Moab that the famine in Bethlehem is over. The rains have returned. The barley is growing again. Life in Judah is back to normal. And Naomi thinks, I should go home. Not because she wants to, but because staying in Moab makes no sense anymore. Her husband is buried here. Her sons are buried here. But she's not Moabite. She never was. And now that they're gone, there's nothing tying her to this place except a decade of bad memories and 2 daughters-in-law who deserve better than a bitter old woman with no prospects. At least in Bethlehem, she'll be among her own people. Maybe someone will remember her. Maybe a distant relative will take pity on her. Maybe she can live out her remaining years in her hometown, poor and alone, but at least home. So she starts packing, which doesn't take long because she doesn't have much. A few pieces of clothing, a water jug, some dried food for the journey. That's it. And Ruth and Orpah, bless them, start packing too. They're coming with her. The 3 of them set out on the road to Judah. It's early morning. The sun hasn't fully risen yet, but the heat is already starting to build. The air smells like dust and dry grass. And somewhere along that road, maybe an hour in, maybe 2, Naomi stops. She turns around and looks at her daughters-in-law, and she tells them to go back. Go back to your mother's houses, she says. Find new husbands. Start over. You're young. You have a chance. I have nothing to offer you. It's a release. a blessing even. She's giving them permission to save themselves. Because what does she have to offer? She's a childless widow with no land, no money, and no future. If they follow her to Bethlehem, they'll be poor foreign widows in a town that doesn't want them. They'll spend the rest of their lives on the margins, gleaning in fields, begging for scraps. Better to turn back now. Better to go home to Moab, where at least they have a shot at remarrying, at having kids, at having a normal life. Orpah and Ruth both start crying. They insist they'll stay, they'll go with her, they'll follow her to Bethlehem. But Naomi pushes harder. She asks them why they would possibly come with her. Does she have more sons in her womb who could become their husbands someday? Even if she got married tonight and bore sons tomorrow, would they really wait for those boys to grow up? It's brutal logic. She's saying, I'm done. My line is finished. There's no future here. Go home. And Orpah, after another round of tears and probably a long, agonizing internal debate, does. She kisses Naomi goodbye. She kisses Ruth goodbye. And she turns back toward Moab. It's not cowardice. It's not betrayal. It's practicality. Orpah is making the sensible choice. She's going back to her family, her gods, her people, her language, her chance at a future. She's cutting her losses. And honestly, good for her. But Ruth stays. And here's where we get one of the most famous speeches in the Bible. Ruth looks at Naomi and tells her not to ask her to leave. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Where you die, I'll die. And there I'll be buried. Now, this speech gets quoted at weddings a lot, which is sweet, but also a little weird, because Ruth is talking to her mother-in-law, not a romantic partner. This is a vow of loyalty, of covenant, of radical, stubborn, probably not entirely rational devotion. Ruth is saying, I'm all in. I'm leaving my country, my family, my gods, my future, and I'm going with you to a place where I will be a foreigner forever. Why? The text doesn't say. Maybe she loved Marlon that much and can't let go of his family. Maybe she loved Naomi that much, genuinely, deeply, and couldn't stand the thought of abandoning her. Maybe she'd come to believe in Yahweh and couldn't go back to worshipping Chemosh. Maybe she just had nowhere else to go and figured bitter company was better than no company at all. Or maybe she looked at Orpah walking back toward Moab and thought, that's the safe choice. That's the reasonable choice. And I don't want to be reasonable. We don't know. What we know is that Ruth refuses to leave. She digs in. She makes her vow. And Naomi, after trying one more time to convince her otherwise, finally stops arguing. Fine, come with me. But don't say I didn't warn you. So the two of them continue on the road to Bethlehem. Just the two of them now. Ruth and Naomi, a bitter widow and a stubborn foreigner. Let's talk about what that journey would have been like. Because it's not a quick trip. It's roughly 50 miles from Moab to Bethlehem. Most of it through rocky, unforgiving terrain. The Dead Sea is somewhere to your west, shimmering and hostile in the distance. The hills are steep. The sun is relentless. You're traveling on foot. No wagon, no donkey. Just two middle-aged women with whatever they can carry on their backs. The road is packed dirt. Sometimes gravel, sometimes just rocks. Your sandals, thin leather straps that have seen better days, offer almost no protection. Your feet ache. Your ankles twist on the uneven ground. By the end of the first day, you have blisters. Water is scarce. You ration it carefully, taking small sips when your throat gets too dry to ignore. There's no refreshing mountain spring waiting for you. Just the occasional well in a village where you have to ask permission to drink. Shade is even scarcer. The sun beats down on you from a sky that's so blue it's almost white. You can feel it on your scalp, your shoulders, the back of your neck. By midday, you're dizzy with heat. At night, you sleep on the ground. No tent, no blanket thick enough to keep out the cold. Just you, the dirt, and the stars. And the whole time, Naomi is quiet. Not reflective quiet, bitter quiet. She's replaying 10 years of loss in her head. Her husband, her sons, her entire future, all of it gone. And now, she's walking back to the town she left during a famine, arriving as the ultimate failure. A woman with no husband, no sons, and no prospects. Every step feels like an admission of defeat. Ruth, meanwhile, is probably terrified. She's never been to Bethlehem. She doesn't know the people, the customs, the unspoken rules. She's heard Naomi talk about it, sure, but hearing about a place and actually going there are two very different things. She's a Moabite walking into Israelite territory, and Moabites are not exactly beloved by Israelites. There's centuries of bad blood between the two nations, wars, betrayals, theological disagreements. She's going to be the foreign daughter-in-law of a woman everyone probably forgot about a decade ago. She's going to stand out. She's going to be labeled. She's going to be suspect. And yet, she keeps walking, one foot in front of the other, because she made a vow, and she's too stubborn, or too loyal, or too foolish, depending on how you look at it, to break it. They arrive in Bethlehem during barley harvest, late spring. The fields around the town are golden with ripe grain. The air smells like cut barley and dust, and the faint sweetness of bread baking in outdoor ovens. The town is bustling with that end of spring energy, people working, people talking, people grateful that the famine is finally over and life is back to normal. It's a good time to arrive in theory. Harvest means work. Work means food. Work means survival. But Naomi isn't thinking about any of that. She's thinking about how small the town looks, how quiet, how utterly unchanged, despite the fact that her entire life has been destroyed since she left. And then someone recognizes her, one of the women, an old neighbor maybe, someone who knew her back when she was young and had a husband and 2 healthy sons. Is that Naomi? Is that really her? After all these years? The women start gathering, whispering, staring. They're not hostile, just curious, surprised, a little shocked maybe, because Naomi looks rough, sun-weathered, thin, older than her years. And Naomi, hearing the whispers, stops them cold. She tells them not to call her Naomi anymore. "Call me Mara," she said. Naomi means pleasant. Mara means bitter. She tells them she left full and came back empty. She went away with a husband and 2 sons. Now she has nothing. The Lord has brought her back afflicted. The Almighty has made her life bitter. It's a public declaration of grief. And it's harsh. She's not interested in pleasantries. She's not interested in catching up or pretending everything's fine. She's announcing to the entire town, "I am broken. I am empty. And I blame God for it." The women don't know what to say, so they look at Ruth instead. "Who's this?" "The Moabite," someone mutters. "Naomi's daughter-in-law, the one who came back with her." And just like that, Ruth is labeled the Moabite. Not Ruth, daughter of so-and-so. Not Ruth, the loyal one. Not Ruth, the woman who gave up everything to follow her mother-in-law into poverty. Just the Moabite. It's going to follow her everywhere in this town. Every conversation, every sideways glance, every interaction. The foreign girl, the outsider, the one from across the border. So here's where we are. Naomi has returned to Bethlehem bitter, empty, publicly declaring that God has ruined her life. Ruth has followed her into a town where she will always be an outsider, Always be suspect. Always be the foreign widow with no protector and no prospects. They have no money, no land, no male relatives to speak for them in legal matters. They are, by every practical measure, doomed. But it's barley harvest, and that means the fields are full. The stalks are heavy with grain. The workers are cutting and bundling and hauling, which means there's a chance, a small, back-breaking, humiliating chance, that they might be able to eat. Because there's this law in Israel, a law that says when you're harvesting your field, you're not allowed to go back and pick up every single stalk. You have to leave some behind. The gleanings, the leftovers, for the poor, for the widows, for the foreigners, for people exactly like Ruth. So, Ruth needs a job, or rather, she needs food, which in ancient Israel means the same thing. You work, you eat. You don't work, you starve. It's a simple economy, and the only work available to a foreign widow with no connections and no land is gleaning. Let's talk about what that actually means. Gleaning is not a job. It's permission to beg with your hands. Here's how it works. During harvest, the workers go through the fields, cutting barley with sickles. They tie the stalks into bundles, haul them off, and leave behind whatever falls on the ground. The dropped stalks, the broken bits, the stuff that's not worth bending over for when you're on a schedule. That's what the gleaners get. The poor, the widows, the foreigners, people like Ruth. You follow behind the harvesters and you pick up what they leave behind, stalk by stalk, all day, in the sun, bent over, your back aching, your hands raw from grabbing rough barley stalks. It's backbreaking, it's humiliating, and it's completely legal. In fact, it's mandated by Israelite law. You're supposed to leave some grain behind for the poor. It's a way of ensuring that the most vulnerable people in society don't starve, which sounds compassionate, and it is. But let's be clear, it's also exhausting and demeaning. You're literally picking up scraps, and everyone knows it. Ruth tells Naomi she's going to go glean in the fields. Naomi, still bitter and exhausted from the journey, just nods. Fine. Do what you need to do. So Ruth goes. She doesn't know which field to try. She doesn't know who owns what. She just walks out to the edge of town where the barley fields stretch out in golden rows, and she picks one. As it turns out, and the text makes a point of this, she ends up in a field that belongs to a man named Boaz. Now, is this coincidence, providence, narrative convenience? The text says she just happened to end up there, which in biblical terms usually means this was not an accident. But Ruth doesn't know that yet. She just knows she's in a field. The sun is already getting hot, and there are workers everywhere cutting barley and pointedly not looking at her. She asks the foreman if she can glean behind the harvesters. He says yes, and so she starts. Let's pause and really picture what this is like. It's mid-morning. The sun is high and brutal. There's no shade in a barley field, just open sky and endless rows of cut stalks. Ruth is bent over, moving slowly through the field, picking up individual pieces of barley that the harvesters have dropped. One stalk, then another, then another. Her back starts hurting almost immediately. That deep, low ache that comes from being hunched over for hours. Her hands get scratched from the rough edges of the barley. Her feet, in those thin leather sandals, are already tired from walking all morning. And it's slow, because you can't just grab handfuls. You have to be careful. You have to pick up what's actually been left behind, not what the harvesters are planning to come back for. You have to stay out of the way. You have to be invisible. And the whole time, you're aware that people are watching you. The harvesters, the other gleaners, the foreman, Everyone knows you're the new girl, the foreign one, the Moabite. You're an outsider in a field full of Israelites, picking up their leftovers, trying not to make eye contact. It's lonely, it's humbling, and it's all Ruth has. Then Boaz shows up. Boaz is a landowner, a wealthy one. He's a relative of Naomi's late husband, Elimelech, though Ruth doesn't know that yet. He arrives at the field to check on the harvest, and he immediately notices Ruth. "Who's that?" he asks the foreman. The foreman tells him, "That's the Moabite girl who came back with Naomi. She asked permission to glean, and she's been working since morning without a break." Boaz walks over to Ruth, and he tells her to stay in his fields. "Don't go anywhere else. Stay here. Glean behind my workers. I've told the men not to bother you. When you're thirsty, drink from the water jars we've set out." Ruth is stunned. She bows down, full face to the ground prostration, and asks him why he's being kind to her. She's a foreigner. She's nobody. Why does he even notice her? And Boaz tells her he's heard about her. He's heard what she did for Naomi, how she left her homeland, her family, her gods, how she came to Israel to take care of a bitter old widow with nothing to offer her. He's impressed. He respects her, and he wants to make sure she's safe in his fields. Also, and he doesn't say this part out loud, but it's implied, she's working in his field anyway, and he's a decent guy. So why not make her life a little less miserable? Let's talk about what this means, because Boaz is doing something quietly radical here. Ruth is a Moabite. Moabites and Israelites have a complicated history involving wars, betrayals, and a general mutual distrust that goes back generations. Most Israelite men wouldn't give a Moabite woman the time of day, let alone protection and preferential treatment. But Boaz does. And not just protection, he goes further. At lunchtime, he invites her to eat with his workers. He offers her bread and roasted grain, actual food, not just leftovers. He makes sure she gets more than her share. And then, after lunch, he quietly tells his workers to leave extra grain behind for her, on purpose. Pull out stalks from the bundles and drop them so she can pick them up. He's rigging the system in her favor. Why? Partly because he's kind, partly because he admires her loyalty to Naomi, partly because he's a man of means and it costs him nothing to be generous, and partly maybe because he's intrigued. Ruth gleans in Boaz's field all day. By evening, her back is screaming. Her hands are raw, her feet are blistered, but she has a good amount of barley, more than she expected, way more than a gleaner usually gets. She threshes it, beats it to separate the grain from the chaff, and carries it back to Naomi. Naomi takes one look at the amount of grain and immediately knows something unusual happened. "Where did you glean today? Whose field was it?" Ruth tells her. "A man named Boaz." And Naomi's entire demeanor changes. Boaz. Boaz. He's a relative. A close one. A kinsman redeemer, actually, which is a technical term we'll get to in a second. Naomi, for the first time since we met her, looks hopeful. This might actually work. So what's a kinsman redeemer? Glad you asked. In ancient Israel, there's this legal concept where a close male relative has the right, and sometimes the obligation, to step in and help family members in distress. If a widow has land but no sons, the kinsman redeemer can buy the land to keep it in the family. If a widow is destitute, the kinsman redeemer can marry her to give her security and produce an heir for her dead husband. It's part safety net, part family honor system, part ancient inheritance law. And Boaz, as it turns out, is one of Naomi's kinsman redeemers, which means he could theoretically marry Ruth. Naomi's brain is already spinning. Ruth keeps gleaning in Boaz's fields throughout the barley harvest, and into the wheat harvest. Weeks go by, maybe months. She works. She brings grain home. Boaz continues to be kind and protective. But nothing else happens. He doesn't propose. He doesn't make a move. He's just there, being decent, keeping his distance. And Naomi, watching this slow non-courtship unfold, decides it's time to take matters into her own hands. She has a plan. It's bold. It's borderline scandalous. And it involves a threshing floor at midnight. Here's the plan. Boaz is going to spend the night at the threshing floor. During harvest, it's common for landowners to sleep near the grain to guard it from thieves. So Boaz will be there alone, sleeping by the pile of winnowed barley. Naomi tells Ruth to wash, put on perfume, wear her best clothes, and go to the threshing floor after dark. Wait until Boaz has finished eating and drinking and has lain down to sleep. Then uncover his feet and lie down there. And wait for him to tell you what to do. Now, let's sit with how weird this is, because this is not normal. This is not how courtship works in ancient Israel. You don't sneak up on a man in the middle of the night, uncover his feet, and lie down next to him, unless you're making a very specific point. Naomi is essentially telling Ruth to make a marriage proposal in the most vulnerable, intimate, socially risky way possible. And Ruth, loyal to the end, agrees to do it. So Ruth goes, she bathes, she puts on perfume, she wears her best dress, which, let's be honest, probably isn't much, but it's the best she has. She waits until evening. Then she walks to the threshing floor. The threshing floor is on a hill where the wind can blow away the chaff. It's open, it's exposed, it's dark. The only light comes from the stars and maybe a small fire. Boaz is there. He's eaten. He's had some wine. He's in a good mood. The harvest has been successful. Life is good. He lies down next to the pile of grain and falls asleep. Ruth waits. She waits until she's sure he's asleep, until the only sound is the wind and his breathing. Then she creeps over, carefully uncovers his feet, and lies down. Imagine, for a second, what this feels like. You're Ruth. Your heart is pounding. You're lying in the dark next to a man you barely know, doing something that could ruin your reputation if anyone finds out. You're vulnerable. You're terrified. You're also weirdly hopeful, because maybe this works. Maybe he says yes. Maybe this is the way forward. Or maybe he wakes up and thinks you're insane. Hours pass. Then, in the middle of the night, Boaz wakes up. He's cold. His feet are uncovered. Something's wrong. He sits up, confused, and realizes there's someone lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asks. And Ruth, in the darkness, tells him, "I'm Ruth, your servant. Spread the corner of your garment over me, because you're a kinsman redeemer. Now." This is not just a random phrase. Spreading your garment over someone is symbolic. It's a marriage proposal. Ruth is saying, "Cover me, protect me, marry me," and she's invoking his legal obligation as a kinsman redeemer. It's bold. It's brilliant. It's slightly manipulative in the best possible way. Boaz is stunned, but in a good way. He calls her blessed. He's honored that she's come to him, that she didn't go after a younger man, that she's chosen him. "Yes," he says, "I'll do this. I'll marry you. Everyone in town knows you're a woman of noble character. You deserve protection and security. But there's a problem. There's another kinsman redeemer, one who's more closely related to Naomi's family than Boaz is. And according to the law, that man has first dibs. Boaz has to give him the chance to step up. If he declines, then Boaz can marry Ruth. But if he accepts, then Ruth is his. So they have to wait. Ruth stays at the threshing floor until just before dawn. Boaz gives her a huge amount of barley, 6 measures, which is an absurd amount to carry, and tells her to go home quietly before anyone sees her and starts rumors. She leaves. She goes back to Naomi. She tells her everything. And Naomi, ever the strategist, tells her to wait. Boaz will handle this. He won't rest until it's settled. The next morning, Boaz goes to the town gate. The town gate is where legal matters are settled. It's like a combination courthouse, city council meeting, and public square. He sits down and waits. And sure enough, the other kinsman redeemer walks by. Boaz calls him over. "Sit down," he says. "We need to talk." He gathers 10 elders as witnesses. Then he explains the situation. Naomi is selling a piece of land that belonged to her husband Elimelech. You, as the closest relative, have the right to buy it. Do you want it? The man thinks about it. Land is valuable. Land is status. "Sure," he says, "I'll buy it." Then Boaz drops the catch. "If you buy the land, you also have to marry Ruth, the Moabite widow, and any son she has will inherit the land, not you. You'll be spending your money to provide for someone else's heir." The man immediately changes his mind. "No, I can't do that. That would endanger my own estate. I can't afford to marry her and risk my inheritance. You take the rights, I'm out." And just like that, the path is clear. Boaz buys the land. He takes on the responsibility. He marries Ruth. The elders bless the union. The townspeople celebrate. Even the women who once whispered about Naomi and the Moabite girl are now cheering. Ruth and Boaz get married, and soon after, Ruth gets pregnant. She gives birth to a son. They name him Obed. And the women of Bethlehem, the same women who watched Naomi stumble back into town bitter and broken, now gather around her, holding her grandson, and tell her how blessed she is. Your daughter-in-law, they say, loves you. She's worth more than 7 sons, and now you have a grandson, an heir, a future. Naomi, who once told everyone to call her Mara because her life was too bitter to bear, is now holding a baby who will grow up to be the grandfather of King David. Ruth, the foreign widow who had nothing, is now part of the most important family line in Israel's history. And it all started with barley fields and a strange, risky night on a threshing floor. So what do we take from this? That loyalty matters, that kindness compounds, that sometimes the most beautiful stories come from the quietest, most desperate places. Ruth didn't perform miracles. She didn't lead armies. She didn't prophesy or build temples. She just showed up. She stayed. She worked. She loved Naomi even when Naomi had nothing to offer. And somehow, that was enough. All right, let's shift gears. We're leaving the quiet barley fields of Bethlehem and jumping north, way north, to the hill country of Ephraim, sometime around 1200 BCE. And we're going to talk about a woman who was not gleaning in fields or proposing to men on threshing floors. She was leading an entire nation. Her name was Deborah, and she did it all from under a palm tree. Picture this. Israel is a mess. It's the period of the judges, which is a polite way of saying nobody's in charge and everything's chaotic. There's no king, no central government, no standing army, just 12 tribes doing their own thing, occasionally remembering there's supposed to be one nation under God, but mostly just bickering and getting invaded. And at this particular moment, they're getting invaded by the Canaanites, specifically by a king named Jabin and his military commander, Sisera. Sisera has 900 iron chariots, which in the Bronze to Iron Age transition is basically like having 900 tanks. You can't fight that. You can't beat that with bronze swords and wooden shields. So Israel doesn't. They just live under Canaanite oppression for 20 years. 20 years of paying tribute 20 years of getting pushed around, 20 years of watching Canaanite soldiers swagger through your towns like they own the place. Which, to be fair, they kind of do. And the Israelites, after 2 decades of this, finally remember they're supposed to have a covenant with God. So they start praying, desperately, please help us. Please send someone. And God sends them Deborah. Deborah is a prophetess, which means she speaks for God. People come to her with questions, and she gives them answers. Sometimes those answers are visions. Sometimes they're just wisdom. But people trust her because she's consistently right. She's also a judge. Not a judge in the modern sense, sitting in a courtroom with a gavel and a black robe. A judge in the ancient Israelite sense means she's a leader, a decision maker, a person people come to when they need disputes settled or guidance given. And Deborah does all of this from under a palm tree. The text calls it the Palm of Deborah. It's somewhere between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and it's where she holds court. Every day people come to her. They line up, they wait, they bring her their problems. My neighbor stole my goat. My brother won't divide the inheritance fairly. My wife's cousin is claiming my land. Who's right? And Deborah sits there, under the palm tree, listening, thinking, rendering judgment. Let's pause and imagine what this is actually like, because the text makes it sound simple. She's a judge. She sits under a tree. People come. Done. But think about the reality of it. You're Deborah. You wake up every morning knowing that today dozens of people are going to show up with their problems, their disputes, their petty grievances and legitimate crises. And you have to figure out who's lying, who's telling the truth, and what the right call is. Every single day. You don't get a day off. You don't get to say, sorry, I'm tired today, come back tomorrow. You're the judge. You're the one people trust. You have to show up. So you walk to the palm tree. Maybe it's a 10-minute walk from your house, maybe longer. The sun is already hot. The air smells like dust and wild herbs, and the faint, ever-present scent of livestock, because this is ancient Israel, and everything smells like livestock. You sit down under the palm tree. The shade is decent, but it's not perfect. The sun still gets through in places. By midday, you're going to be sweating. The ground beneath you is hard-packed dirt, worn smooth by years of people standing there waiting for your judgment. You shift your weight, trying to find a comfortable position, knowing you're going to be here for hours. The palm fronds rustle overhead. It's a constant whispering sound, sometimes soothing, sometimes maddening when you're trying to concentrate. There's a water jug nearby. Clay, heavy, perpetually warm, because nothing stays cool in this heat. You'll sip from it throughout the day, rationing it, because getting up to refill it means losing time, and the line of people waiting doesn't get any shorter. And the people start arriving. The first guy's angry. He's been wronged, he insists. His neighbor definitely stole his goat. He has witnesses. He has evidence. He wants justice. You listen. You ask questions. You hear the neighbor's side. Turns out the goat wandered off and the neighbor was just keeping it safe until the owner came to claim it. But the owner is paranoid and thinks everyone's out to get him. You render judgment. Return the goat. Move on. Next case. A woman whose husband died and whose brother-in-law is refusing to honor the Levirate marriage law. She's destitute. She needs help. You tell the brother-in-law to do his duty or publicly release her so she can find someone else. Next case. A land dispute, a family feud, a merchant who got cheated, a teenager who dishonored his parents. On and on and on. And this is your life, not just once, every day, for years. Now, let's add another layer. Deborah is a woman in a deeply patriarchal society, and she's not just a woman with a little bit of influence. She's the leader, the one everyone listens to. Men come to her for answers. Tribal elders defer to her judgment. Warriors respect her authority. How does that work? The text doesn't explain. It just presents it as fact. Deborah is the judge, period. But it must have been strange, maybe even uncomfortable for some people. There's no indication that anyone openly challenges her. No one says, "Why are we listening to a woman?" But you have to imagine there were whispers, side eyes, men who came to her for judgment and left feeling vaguely emasculated by the whole experience. And Deborah? She just keeps doing her job. She doesn't apologize for being a woman in a man's role. She doesn't downplay her authority. She doesn't perform some kind of ancient humility routine to make people comfortable. She's the judge. She speaks for God. End of discussion. But let's be real. She has to be aware of it. Every time a tribal elder sits across from her, waiting for her judgment, there's a moment, a flicker, where he's deciding whether to accept her authority or push back. And she has to be unflinching, every time. Because one moment of hesitation, one instance of self-doubt, and the whole thing crumbles. So she doesn't hesitate. She doesn't second guess. She delivers the word of the Lord with the same authority a male prophet would. And she dares anyone to question it. They don't. So Israel is under Canaanite oppression for 20 years. And Deborah is judging under her palm tree. And at some point, she gets a message from God. It's time to do something about Sisera. God tells her to summon a man named Barak. He's a military leader from the tribe of Naphtali, a capable guy, someone who can actually lead troops into battle. And God's message is clear. Take 10,000 men. Go to Mount Tabor. I will lure Sisera and his chariots to the Kishon River, and I will give you victory. So Deborah sends for Barak. Barak shows up, and Deborah delivers the message. God is commanding you to take 10,000 men to Mount Tabor. Sisera will come after you with his chariots, and God will deliver him into your hands. And Barak, this experienced military commander, this warrior who's presumably seen battle before, looks at Deborah and says, "I'll do it, but only if you come with me. If you don't go, I'm not going." Now, let's sit with this for a second, because this is a fascinating moment. Barak is essentially saying, I trust God's message. I believe the prophecy, but I need you there. I need the prophetess. I need the woman who speaks for God standing next to me, or I'm not doing this. Is it faith? Is it cowardice? Is it strategic thinking? The text doesn't judge him for it, but Deborah does give him a warning. She tells him fine, she'll go. But because of this, because he won't go without her, the glory of the victory won't go to him. God will hand Sisera over to a woman. Barak doesn't care. Or maybe he does care, but he cares more about having Deborah with him. Either way, he agrees. Fine, let's go. So Deborah and Barak gather 10,000 men from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun. Let's talk about what this would have looked like, because gathering 10,000 men in ancient Israel is not like sending out a mass email and waiting for RSVPs. There's no standing army, no barracks, no centralized command structure. You have to go to the tribes. You have to convince them to send their men. You have to deal with tribal politics, old grudges, logistical nightmares. Some tribes send men immediately. Others drag their feet. Others don't send anyone at all because they're too far away or too scared or just don't feel like it. The men who do show up are farmers, shepherds, tradesmen. They're not professional soldiers. They have bronze weapons, leather armor if they're lucky, and a vague idea of how to fight in formation. They're scared because everyone knows about Sisera's chariots. Everyone's heard the stories. 900 iron chariots that can crush infantry like they're nothing. Chariots with blades on the wheels. Chariots driven by trained Canaanite soldiers who've been doing this for years. How do you fight that? You don't. You run. Or you die. But Deborah says God will deliver Sisera into their hands. And Barak trusts her. And the 10,000 men trust Barak. So they march. It's not a quick trip. Mount Tabor is miles away. The 10,000 men walk in loose formation, kicking up dust with every step. The sound of it, thousands of sandaled feet on dry ground, is like constant low thunder. The men are quiet. Some of them pray under their breath. Others joke nervously, that gallows humor that soldiers use when they're terrified but trying not to show it. Others are just silent, thinking about their families, their farms, the fact that they might not make it home. Deborah walks with them. Or maybe she rides a donkey. The text doesn't say. But she's there. This prophetess in her 50s or 60s, marching toward a battle against 900 iron chariots. What is she thinking? That God said this will work. That she has to trust the prophecy. That Barak needs her there, and the men need to see her there, or the whole thing falls apart. That she's tired, that her feet hurt, that leading a nation from under a palm tree is one thing, but this, marching to war, is something else entirely. But she keeps walking. They head to Mount Tabor. Mount Tabor is a distinctive dome-shaped mountain in the Jezreel Valley. It rises about 1,300 feet above the valley floor, and from the top, you can see for miles in every direction. It's also a defensible position. You can see anyone approaching. You have the high ground. If you're going to make a stand against 900 chariots, this is where you do it. So the 10,000 men set up camp on the mountain, and they wait. What are they thinking? Probably that this is insane. Probably that they're going to die. Probably that following a prophetess and a reluctant general into battle against the most terrifying military force in the region is a suicide mission. But they're here. They've committed. So they sharpen their weapons, check their armor, say quiet prayers to God, and wait. The waiting is the worst part, because when you're waiting, you have time to think. Time to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. Time to picture those iron chariots bearing down on you, the wheels crushing bone, the blades cutting through flesh like it's nothing. Some of the men pace, others sit in small groups, talking in low voices. A few try to sleep but can't. The tension is thick. You can feel it in the air, in the way everyone moves just a little too carefully, a little too quietly. Night falls. The camp settles into an uneasy rest. Fires flicker. Guards keep watch. And in the morning, Sisera comes. Meanwhile, word reaches Sisera that the Israelites are gathering at Mount Tabor. And Sisera, who's been bullying Israel for 20 years, decides to crush this little rebellion before it starts. He mobilizes his forces, all 900 chariots, thousands of soldiers, the full weight of his military power, and he marches toward Mount Tabor. The sound alone must have been terrifying. 900 chariots rumbling across the valley floor, the ground shaking, the dust rising in massive clouds, the creak of wheels, the snorting of horses, the shouts of soldiers. It's an overwhelming display of force. And from the top of Mount Tabor, the Israelites can see it all. Deborah stands next to Barak and tells him, "This is the day. God is going before you. Go." And Barak, to his credit, does. He gives the order. The 10,000 men charge down the mountain, which seems like a terrible idea, because chariots are designed for flat, open terrain. Chariots are unstoppable on the valley floor. Charging toward them is suicide. But here's the thing. God doesn't fight fair. The Kishon River, which runs through the valley, suddenly floods. Maybe there was a storm upstream. Maybe it was a freak weather event. Maybe it was a miracle. Whatever the cause, the river overflows. The valley floor turns to mud. Thick, sucking, wheel-clogging mud. And Sisera's 900 iron chariots, his unbeatable, unstoppable, terrifying war machines, become useless. The wheels sink. The horses panic. The chariots crash into each other. The soldiers, trained to fight from chariots, are now stuck on foot in the mud, trying to fend off 10,000 screaming Israelites charging down a mountain. It's chaos. It's a rout. It's the worst day of Sisera's life. Barak's forces tear through the Canaanite army. It's not a battle. It's a slaughter. The chariots are disabled. The soldiers are disoriented. The Israelites have momentum, high ground, and divine intervention on their side. Sisera's army is destroyed. Utterly, completely. Every single chariot, every single soldier, except one. Sisera himself manages to escape. He jumps out of his chariot and runs. On foot, alone, terrified. He's the commander who terrorized Israel for 20 years, and now he's running for his life through the mud like a panicked rabbit. Where does he go? He runs to the tent of a woman named Jael. And that's where things get really interesting. So Sisera arrives with his 900 chariots, and the Israelites, standing on top of Mount Tabor, can see the entire Canaanite army spreading out across the valley floor like a dark stain. The chariots form up in rows, neat, organized, terrifying. The soldiers march into position, thousands of them, professional warriors with iron weapons and years of experience crushing rebellions exactly like this one. And the Israelites watch, and they think, we're going to die. Deborah stands next to Barak and tells him, this is the day. God is going before you. Go. And Barak, to his credit, does. He gives the order. The 10,000 men charge down the mountain. It must have felt insane. Running toward 900 iron chariots, running toward certain death. But they do it anyway, because Deborah said God would deliver them. And what else are you going to do at this point? Turn around and go home. So they run, screaming, weapons raised, adrenaline drowning out the terror. And that's when the sky opens up. It rains. Not a gentle rain, not a pleasant spring shower, a deluge. The kind of sudden, violent storm that turns roads into rivers and valleys into swamps. The Kishon River, which runs through the Jezreel Valley, swells, fast. The water level rises, the banks overflow, and the valley floor, the flat, perfect terrain that chariots were designed for, turns into a muddy nightmare. The ground gets soft, then wet, then thick, then completely impassable. And Sisera's 900 iron chariots, his pride, his unstoppable military advantage, become 900 very expensive, very useless hunks of metal sinking into the mud. The wheels don't turn, they just dig deeper. The horses panic, rearing and thrashing, making it worse. The chariots crash into each other. Soldiers try to push them free and end up waist-deep in muck. And the Israelites are still charging down the mountain. It's not a battle. It's a massacre. The Canaanite soldiers are disoriented, stuck, trying to fight on foot in the mud against an army with momentum and high ground, and the distinct sense that God himself just flooded a valley to help them win. The Israelites tear through them, swords, spears, sheer desperate fury. Bodies fall into the mud. Blood mixes with rainwater. The sound of it, metal on metal, screams. The wet thud of bodies hitting the ground is deafening. Sisera, standing in his chariot, watches his entire army collapse in real time. 20 years of military dominance, 20 years of terrorizing Israel, 20 years of unquestioned superiority, gone. In minutes, he jumps out of his chariot and runs. Let's pause here and think about what this moment is like for Sisera. You're the commander, the man everyone feared, the guy with 900 chariots who could crush any rebellion before breakfast. And now you're running, on foot, alone, through the mud. Your army is being slaughtered behind you. Your chariots are useless. Your reputation is destroyed. You're soaked. Your armor is heavy. Your lungs are burning. You keep slipping in the mud, catching yourself, forcing your legs to keep moving. Where are you even going? Away. Anywhere. Just away. You run until you can't hear the battle anymore, until your legs are shaking and your chest feels like it's going to explode, until you're so far from the valley that you think maybe you're safe. And then you see the tents. The tents belong to Heber the Kenite. The Kenites are metal workers, nomadic people who move from place to place, setting up camp wherever there's work. They're neutral. They don't pick sides in wars. They just make tools and weapons and mind their own business. Heber's clan has a peace treaty with King Jabin, which means Sisera thinks he's safe here. He stumbles toward the tents, exhausted, desperate, and a woman comes out to meet him. Her name is Jael. Jael is Heber's wife. The text doesn't tell us much about her. We don't know how old she is. We don't know if she has kids. We don't know what she thinks about the Canaanites or the Israelites or this whole war situation. What we know is that she sees Sisera, this terrified mud-covered military commander, and she invites him into her tent. "Come in," she says. "Don't be afraid." And Sisera, because he has no other options and because she's offering shelter, goes inside. Let's talk about what Jael's tent is like, because this is not a house. This is not a building. This is a nomadic tent made of goat hair fabric stretched over wooden poles. The fabric is dark, thick, weatherproof. It smells like animal hair and smoke and the faint mustiness of fabric that's been packed and unpacked 100 times. Inside is dim. The only light comes from the entrance, and maybe a small oil lamp flickering in the corner. The flame dances, casting shifting shadows on the fabric walls. The floor is packed earth, covered with woven mats that have been walked on so many times, they're worn smooth in places. A few blankets are folded in a corner. Storage baskets line the edges, grain, dried fruit, tools, household items. There's a fire pit in the center, currently just smoldering embers. The heat from it has mostly faded, leaving just a faint warmth and the smell of old smoke. It's cramped. It's simple. It's the entire living space for a family. Everything you own fits in here. Everything you do, sleeping, eating, working, happens in this one space. And now Sisera is inside, dripping mud and rainwater onto the mats, tracking filth across her carefully maintained home. Jael doesn't say anything about it. She tells him to lie down. She takes one of the blankets, probably her own, and covers him with it. He's shivering. Not from cold, really. From shock. From exhaustion. From the bone-deep terror of watching your entire army get destroyed in less than an hour. His clothes are soaked. His armor is caked with mud. He smells like sweat and fear and the metallic tang of blood, though whether it's his or someone else's, Jael doesn't know. He asks her for water. His voice is hoarse, desperate, and she gives him milk instead. Why milk? Good question. Maybe it's what she has on hand. Maybe it's more filling than water. Maybe it's a cultural hospitality thing. You give guests the best you have, and milk is a luxury. Or maybe, and this is darker, she's trying to make him drowsy. Milk, especially warm milk, is soothing. calming. It makes you sleepy. Sisera drinks it. He tells Jael to stand at the entrance of the tent. If anyone comes looking for him, tell them there's no one here. She agrees. And then Sisera, because he's utterly exhausted and thinks he's safe and has just been through the worst day of his life, falls asleep. Jael stands there, looking at him. This man who terrorized her neighbors for 20 years. This commander who led 900 chariots against farmers and shepherds. This symbol of Canaanite oppression. He's asleep in her tent, vulnerable, trusting her. And she makes a decision. She walks over to the tent supplies, the tools, the things you need when you're constantly setting up and taking down a nomadic camp. She picks up a tent peg, a long wooden stake with a pointed end, the kind you hammer into the ground to secure the tent ropes. And she picks up a hammer, heavy, solid, the kind of tool she's used 1,000 times to set up this tent, to drive stakes into hard ground, to anchor her home. She walks back over to Sisera. He's still asleep, breathing slow and deep. Unaware, she kneels down next to him. And here's where we need to pause and really think about what this moment is like. Because Jael is not a soldier. She's not trained for this. She's not a warrior who's killed before. She's a nomadic woman who spends her days weaving goat hair into tent fabric, cooking lentils over a fire, hauling water, managing a household, packing and unpacking camp every time her family moves to find work. Her hands are used to holding weaving tools, cooking implements, the handles of water jugs, not weapons. But she's about to kill a man with a tent peg. What is going through her head? Fear, first of all. Raw, cold fear. Her hands are shaking. She can feel her pulse in her throat. She's thinking, if I do this wrong, if he wakes up, he'll kill me. He's a trained soldier. He's killed more people than I can count. And if he wakes up and realizes what I'm trying to do, he'll snap my neck before I can scream. But also resolve. Because this man represents oppression, violence, 20 years of suffering for her neighbors, 20 years of taking what he wants and destroying anyone who resists. And he's here, in her tent, vulnerable, trusting her. She thinks about the Israelite families he's terrorized, the villages burned, the people killed, and maybe she's thinking, why should I protect him? Why should I save the man who's been destroying everything around us? Maybe she's angry. Maybe she's righteous. Maybe she's just tired of living in a world where men like Sisera get to do whatever they want, and everyone else just has to survive it. She positions the tent peg against his temple, right there, where the skull is thinnest, where a single blow would go straight through to the brain. She knows exactly where to put it, because she's driven tent pegs 1,000 times. She knows the angle, the pressure, the force required to make a stake go through resistance and into the earth. She's just never driven one through a person before. She raises the hammer. Her whole body is tense. She's holding her breath. One chance, one strike. It has to work. And she brings the hammer down. Hard. The sound of it is awful. The crunch of bone. The wet thud of metal going through flesh. The final hollow thump as the peg punches through the other side and bites into the hard-packed earth beneath his head. She hits it again, just to be sure, driving it all the way in, anchoring him to the ground like she's securing a tent in high wind. And then she steps back. Let's be clear about what this means. She doesn't hesitate. She doesn't do it halfway. She hammers that tent peg all the way through his head and into the earth. One strike, maybe two. Fast, efficient. The way you'd hammer a tent peg into the ground, because that's exactly what she's done 1,000 times before. Sisera doesn't wake up, doesn't scream, doesn't fight. He just dies. Instantly. And Jael stands there, holding the hammer, looking at the body of the most feared military commander in the region, pinned to the ground of her tent like a piece of furniture. Her hands are still shaking. She's breathing hard, adrenaline flooding her system. She drops the hammer. The sound of it hitting the ground seems impossibly loud in the silence. There's blood, not a lot, but some, seeping into the mat beneath his head. She's going to have to clean that, burn the mat probably, get the stain out of the earth floor if she can. But first, she has to deal with the body, with the fact that she just killed a man, in her home, in the space where she sleeps and eats and lives. She can't move him. He's too heavy. And besides, he's literally pinned to the ground. So she leaves him there, covers him back up with the blanket, hiding the tent peg and the blood and the horrible stillness of his body. And then she goes outside, takes a breath, tries to steady herself. What does she do next? She waits, because she knows someone will come looking for him. Either his men, if any of them survived, or the Israelites. She stands near her tent, not too far, not so close that she looks suspicious. Just a woman going about her business, tending to her home. Her heart is still racing. Every time she hears footsteps, she tenses. Is it the Canaanites? Will they figure out what happened? Will they kill her entire family? Or is it the Israelites? Will they believe her? Will they see this as an act of loyalty or an act of murder? She doesn't know, so she waits. The sun is setting. Long shadows stretch across the camp. The air is cooling. And then she sees him, Barak. And sure enough, Barak shows up. He's been chasing Sisera, following his trail, trying to find the one man who escaped the battle. He arrives at Jael's tent, breathing hard, probably covered in mud and blood, looking for the enemy commander. And Jael comes out and tells him, "Come, I'll show you the man you're looking for." She leads him inside, and there's Sisera, dead, a tent peg through his head, pinned to the ground. Barak just stares, because Deborah told him this would happen. She told him that because he wouldn't go to battle without her, the glory of the victory wouldn't go to him. God would hand Sisera over to a woman. And here it is, literally. Sisera defeated by a woman with a tent peg and a hammer. The war is over. Sisera is dead. His army is destroyed. King Jabin's power is broken. Israel is free from Canaanite oppression. And Deborah, standing somewhere in the aftermath of all this, composes a song, because that's what you do after a victory like this. You write it down. You make sure people remember. You turn the chaos and the terror and the impossible triumph into something people can sing, something that will last. The Song of Deborah is one of the oldest pieces of Hebrew poetry in the Bible. Scholars think it might have been composed within days or weeks of the battle, while the memory was still fresh, while the emotions were still raw. And it shows. It's vivid. It's visceral. It's triumphant. It's brutal. She sings about the state of Israel before the battle, how the roads were abandoned, how people were too afraid to travel, how life had come to a grinding, terrified halt under Canaanite oppression. She sings about how the leaders stepped up, how the people volunteered, how the tribes came together. Well, some of them anyway. She calls out the tribes who showed up: Ephraim, Benjamin, Zebulun, Issachar, Naphtali. These are the ones who risked everything. And she calls out the tribes who didn't. Reuben, still sitting around debating what to do. Gilead, staying safely across the Jordan. Dan, hanging out by their ships. Asher, chilling on the seacoast like nothing's happening. It's not subtle. She's putting them on blast, forever, in song form. She sings about the battle, about the stars fighting from their courses, about the river Kishon sweeping away the enemy, about the horses' hooves thundering uselessly as the chariots sank into the mud. She sings about Jael, blessed above women, the woman who offered hospitality and then drove a tent peg through the skull of the enemy commander. She describes it in detail: the milk, the rug, the hammer, the peg, the death, and then, and this is the darkest part, she sings about Sisera's mother. Picture it: an aging woman in a palace, standing at a window, waiting for her son to come home from battle. Why is his chariot delayed? Why isn't he here yet? And her ladies in waiting trying to comfort her, saying, "Oh, he's probably just busy, probably dividing the plunder. A girl or two for every man. Colourful garments, embroidered cloth for the necks of the spoil." They're imagining victory, imagining their men coming home with treasure and captives and stories of conquest. And Deborah, singing this, knows the truth. Sisera is dead. His mother is waiting for a son who will never return. And there's something both tragic and satisfying about it. This is what oppression costs. This is what happens when you terrorize people for 20 years. Your mother waits at a window, forever. And it's Deborah's way of making sure that everyone remembers. God delivered Israel through a prophetess, through a reluctant general, through a woman with a tent peg. After this, the land has peace for 40 years. 40 years of no oppression, no foreign armies, no tribute, just peace. And Deborah? She goes back to her palm tree. She keeps judging, keeps listening to disputes about goats and land and family drama, keeps speaking for God, keeps being the steady, unflappable leader that Israel needs. No one challenges her authority now. Not after this. Not after she led them to the most decisive military victory in a generation. She's the judge, the prophetess, the woman who stood on a battlefield and watched God turn a valley into a swamp and deliver 900 chariots into the hands of farmers with bronze swords. And every day, people come to the palm of Deborah. They wait in line. They ask their questions. They receive her judgments. And she sits under that tree in the shade that's never quite perfect, with the palm fronds rustling overhead. And she does her job, steady, unflinching, unshakable, for 40 years. Let's talk about Hannah. Hannah is barren. In ancient Israel, this is not just a medical condition. This is a social catastrophe. This is your worth as a woman being called into question. This is whispers behind your back and pitying looks from neighbors, and the slow, crushing weight of feeling like you failed at the one thing you're supposed to be able to do. Have children. Continue the family line. Give your husband sons. Hannah can't. And everyone knows it. Hannah is married to a man named Elkanah. Elkanah is, by all accounts, a decent guy. He loves Hannah. He tries to comfort her. He tells her she's worth more to him than 10 sons. Which is sweet. But it doesn't help, because Elkanah also has a second wife. Her name is Peninnah, and Peninnah has children. Lots of them. Sons and daughters. A whole house full of proof that she is fertile, blessed, successful at the one job that matters in their world. Now, polygamy in ancient Israel is complicated. It's legal. It's common among men who can afford it. But that doesn't mean it's not messy. 2 wives, 1 house, constant comparison. And Peninnah, blessed be her petty heart, never lets Hannah forget it. Let's pause and think about what daily life is like in this household. You're Hannah. You wake up every morning in a house full of children who aren't yours. You hear them crying, laughing, fighting. You see Peninnah nursing a baby, or scolding a toddler, or braiding her daughter's hair. The house smells like children. milk, soiled cloths that need washing, the sweet, slightly sour smell of small bodies that have been running around all day. You help raise these children, because in a household like this, everyone contributes. You're not their mother, but you're still expected to feed them, watch them, care for them. You wipe noses. You break up fights. You tell them stories. You tuck them in at night, and every moment of it is a reminder. These are not your children. You have no children. You are barren. You grind grain for bread every morning. The repetitive motion of pushing the stone in circles, crushing the wheat kernels into flour. Your arms ache. Your back aches. And the whole time, you're listening to Peninnah sing to her baby in the next room. You go to the well to draw water. The clay jar is heavy when it's full. You balance it on your shoulder, feeling the weight of it press into your collarbone, and you walk carefully till you don't spill. The other women in the village look at you with pity or judgment, or both. They stop inviting you to certain gatherings, the ones where new mothers compare notes on teething and sleeping through the night. When you approach the well, the conversations stop. Not because they're cruel, necessarily, just because they don't know what to say. How do you make small talk with the barren woman? What do you ask her about? Her day, her work. She has no children to talk about, no pregnancy to announce, no hopes for the future, so they just go quiet. And you fill your jar, and you leave. And Peninnah doesn't let a single day pass without reminding you of her superiority. She doesn't have to say much. Sometimes it's just a look, a smug little smile when one of her children runs to her crying and she scoops them up. A comment about how exhausting it is to have so many kids, said with just enough satisfaction that you know she's not actually complaining. A sigh about how blessed she is, how full her life is, how meaningful motherhood makes everything. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Every year, Elkanah takes his whole family to Shiloh. Shiloh is where the tabernacle is, the portable temple, the dwelling place of God. It's where the Ark of the Covenant sits. It's where the high priest offers sacrifices and intercedes for the people. And Elkanah, being a devout man, makes the pilgrimage every year to worship and sacrifice. The whole family goes. Elkanah, Hannah, Peninnah, all of Peninnah's children. It's a multi-day journey, maybe a week, depending on where they're starting from. You're traveling on foot, carrying supplies, managing kids who get tired and whiny and need to stop every hour. The road is dusty. Your feet hurt within the first few hours. The sandals you're wearing, thin leather straps that have been repaired multiple times, offer almost no cushioning. You can feel every rock, every bump, every uneven patch of ground. The sun beats down, no shade, just open road and hills and the occasional scraggly tree that doesn't provide nearly enough relief. The children complain. They're hungry, they're tired, they need to stop and rest. Peninnah manages them with the efficiency of someone who's done this many times before. She distributes dried fruit. She tells them stories to keep them moving. She carries the youngest when they can't walk anymore. And Hannah walks alongside, carrying supplies, helping where she can, silent. She watches Elkanah help carry one of Peninnah's sons when the boy's legs give out. She watches Peninnah soothe a crying toddler. She watches this family, her family, function without her being a mother in it. It's chaos. And Hannah walks through it all, silent, watching Peninnah manage her brood, watching Elkanah help carry the little ones, watching a family that should include her children but doesn't. They arrive in Shiloh. Shiloh is bustling during festival times. Pilgrims from all over Israel, tents set up around the tabernacle, merchants selling grain and oil and animals for sacrifice, the smell of roasting meat from the altar, the sound of prayers and singing and children running around. It's loud, it's crowded, it's overwhelming. Elkanah makes his sacrifice. He offers a portion to God and keeps the rest for the family feast. This is how it works. You sacrifice an animal, the priests get their share, and you take the rest home to eat. It's worship and a family meal all in one. And when it's time to divide the portions, Elkanah gives Hannah a double portion because he loves her, because he wants her to know she matters, because in a culture where your worth is measured by your fertility, he's trying to tell her she's valued anyway. It's a kind gesture. It also makes Peninnah furious. Peninnah sees that double portion and decides it's time to twist the knife. She starts in on Hannah, provokes her. The text says she does it deliberately, cruelly, to make Hannah weep. We don't know exactly what she says. Maybe she talks about her own children, how blessed she is, how God has obviously favored her, how sad it must be for Hannah to be barren, how unfortunate, how tragic. Or maybe she doesn't even mention Hannah directly. Maybe she just talks loudly about her kids within Hannah's earshot, how proud she is, how exhausting but rewarding motherhood is, how she can't imagine life without them. Either way, the message is clear. I have what you want, and you never will. Hannah tries to eat. She can't. Her throat is tight. Her stomach is in knots. The food tastes like ash. She tries to hold it together. She doesn't want to make a scene, doesn't want to ruin the family gathering. But she can't. She stands up, leaves the feast, and walks to the tabernacle. The tabernacle is quieter now. Most people are still at their family feasts. The priests have finished the major sacrifices. There's just the low murmur of evening prayers and the flicker of oil lamps casting long shadows on the tent walls. Hannah stands there. Her hands are shaking. Her breath is coming in short gasps. She can still hear Peninnah's voice in her head, still feel the weight of all those years of shame and disappointment and longing. And she prays, but not out loud. She prays silently. Her lips are moving rapidly, forming words that only God can hear. She's weeping, tears streaming down her face, making tracks through the dust on her cheeks. Her whole body is shaking with the force of her grief and desperation. Her throat is tight. Her chest hurts. She feels like she can't breathe, like the weight of everything is crushing her. Let's think about what this moment is like. You're Hannah. You've been carrying this pain for years. The barrenness, the shame, the taunting, the loneliness, the sense that you are failing at the one thing that gives a woman value in your world, the constant nagging feeling that you are less than, broken, cursed even, and you're standing in the presence of God, in the place where He dwells, where prayers are supposed to be heard, and you're begging. You're not asking politely. You're not reciting a formal prayer with the right words in the right order. You're pouring out your soul. You're ugly crying in public. You don't care who sees. You don't care what you look like. You don't care if people think you've lost your mind. You're desperate. Your hands are clasped so tightly your knuckles are white. Your jaw is clenched. Your whole body is tense with the effort of holding yourself together while simultaneously falling apart. You tell God, if you give me a son, I'll give him back to you. I'll dedicate him to your service. He'll be yours his whole life. He'll never drink wine. He'll serve in the tabernacle. Just please, please, let me have a child. It's a vow, a bargain, a covenant, and you mean every word. Even though you know what it will cost, even though you know you'll have to give him up, you don't care. You just need to know that you can do this, that your body works, that you're not broken, that God hasn't forgotten you, please." Eli is sitting nearby. Eli is the high priest, an old man. He's seen a lot in his years of service. He's used to pilgrims coming to pray and make requests and have emotional moments in the tabernacle. But he's never seen anything quite like this. He watches Hannah, sees her lips moving rapidly, sees her body swaying, sees the tears streaming down her face, sees the intensity of whatever's happening, and he assumes she's drunk. It's festival time. People have been feasting. Wine has been flowing. And here's this woman stumbling around the tabernacle, mumbling to herself, clearly out of control. So he intervenes. He tells her to stop. "How long are you going to stay drunk? Put away your wine. This is a holy place. Pull yourself together. It's not cruel. It's just dismissive." He's seen drunk pilgrims before. This looks like another one. Hannah looks at him, and she has to explain, has to clarify, has to make this old priest understand that she's not drunk. She's in anguish. She tells him, "I'm not drunk. I haven't had any wine. I'm a woman in deep distress. I'm pouring out my soul to the Lord. Don't mistake me for some worthless woman. I've been praying out of my great anguish and grief." And Eli, to his credit, realizes his mistake. He sees it now, the pain, the sincerity, the depth of her desperation. His whole demeanor changes. He softens. He tells her, "Go in peace. May the God of Israel grant you what you've asked of him." It's a blessing, a priestly benediction, the kind of thing that carries weight when it comes from the high priest. And Hannah believes him. Here's the thing. Nothing has changed yet. She's not pregnant. The prayer hasn't been answered. She's still barren. But something shifts in her. She tells Eli, "Thank you. I hope I find favor in your eyes." And then she leaves. She goes back to the feast. She eats. Her face is no longer downcast. The text makes a point of this. She's different now, lighter. The crushing weight of despair has lifted. Why? Because she's handed it over. She's given her pain and her plea to God. She's made a vow. She's done everything she can do. And now she has to wait. But the waiting feels different because she's not carrying it alone anymore. The family finishes their time in Shiloh. They pack up. They make the long journey back home. And life goes back to normal. Elkanah goes back to work. Peninnah goes back to managing her children and probably being smug. Hannah goes back to her daily routine of drawing water and grinding grain and helping care for kids who aren't hers. But she's different. She's quieter, more settled. There's a kind of peace in her that wasn't there before. And then, a few months later, she realizes she's pregnant. Let's sit with what this means. After years of barrenness, after years of shame and taunting and feeling like a failure, after years of desperate, silent prayers that seem to go nowhere, she's pregnant. Her body is doing the thing it's supposed to do, the thing everyone said it couldn't do, the thing she thought would never happen. And she knows, she absolutely knows, this is God answering her prayer. This is the result of that night in Shiloh, that desperate, ugly crying, soul-pouring moment at the tabernacle. That vow she made, she's going to have a son, and she's going to give him back to God, because that was the deal, that was the vow. If you give me a son, I'll dedicate him to your service forever. And Hannah meant it. The pregnancy progresses. Hannah's body changes, swells, slows down. She feels the baby move, kick, shift positions. She doesn't go to Shiloh that year, not while she's pregnant. It's too difficult, too risky. So, Elkanah and the rest of the family go without her, and Hannah stays home, resting, preparing, thinking about the vow she made and what it's going to cost her. because she knows. She knows that this child she's carrying, this longed for, prayed for, miraculous child, is not hers to keep. He's on loan, a gift with an expiration date. She'll get a few years with him, maybe 3, maybe 5, however long it takes to wean him. And then she'll take him to Shiloh, and she'll leave him there, in the care of Eli the priest, to serve in the tabernacle for the rest of his life. She'll hand over the one thing she wanted more than anything, the one thing that proved her worth, ended her shame, silenced Peninnah's taunts. She'll give him back to God, because that's what she promised. And 9 months after that night at the tabernacle, Hannah gives birth to a son. She names him Samuel, which means heard by God, because God heard her in her desperation, in her grief, in that moment when she was weeping silently in the tabernacle, pouring out her soul, making a vow she knew would cost her everything. God heard, and now she's holding the answer. This tiny, perfect, impossible child, hers, for now, but not forever. So Hannah has a son, Samuel, heard by God, and for the first few years he's hers. She nurses him, she rocks him when he cries. She watches him learn to sit up, then crawl, then take his first wobbly steps. She teaches him to say his first words. She kisses scraped knees. She holds him when he's scared. She does all the things mothers do, knowing the whole time that she's going to have to give him up. Let's talk about what those early years are like, because this isn't a normal motherhood experience. This is motherhood with an expiration date. Every milestone, every smile, every laugh, every new word is bittersweet. You're Hannah. You're holding your son. He's maybe 2 years old, still small enough to fit in your lap, still young enough to fall asleep on your chest, his breath warm against your neck. His hair is soft, baby fine. It smells like sunshine and the olive oil soap you use to wash it. His hands are tiny, pudgy. He grabs your finger when you hold it out to him, his whole fist barely wrapping around it. His laugh is high and pure and absolutely perfect. And you're thinking, how much longer do I have? When do I have to take him to Shiloh? When he's 3, 4, 5? How long until he's weaned and the vow kicks in, and you have to hand him over to Eli the priest and walk away? You don't want to rush it, but you also know you can't delay forever. You made a promise, and you're a woman who keeps her promises. So you hold him a little tighter. You memorize the weight of him, the way his hair curls at his temples, the sound of his laugh, the way he says your name, the way he reaches for you when he's scared or tired or just wants his mother. Mama, you're storing it all up, because soon you won't have this anymore. Meanwhile, Peninnah is still in the picture, and Peninnah, blessed be her eternal pettiness, has lost her primary weapon. Hannah is no longer barren. Hannah has a son. Hannah has proven that her body works, that God has blessed her, that she is not, in fact, cursed or broken or worthless. Peninnah still has more children. She still has her whole brood running around the house like a chaotic Bronze Age daycare center. But the power dynamic has shifted. Hannah is a mother now, and not just any mother. She's the mother of a miracle child, a child prayed for, a child promised to God. Peninnah can't compete with that, and she knows it. So she's quieter, less smug, still there, still managing her household full of children, but the constant needling has stopped. Because what's she going to say? At least I get to keep my kids. Even Peninnah isn't that cruel. The years pass. Samuel grows, and eventually, Hannah decides it's time. He's weaned, old enough to survive without her, old enough to begin learning the duties of the tabernacle, old enough for her to fulfill her vow. She tells Elkanah. He understands. He knew this was coming. They both did. So they prepare for the journey to Shiloh. But this time, it's different. This time, Hannah isn't going just to worship and sacrifice and come home. This time, she's going to leave part of herself behind. She packs carefully. She brings extra supplies. A linen ephod, a priestly garment that she's made for Samuel. Small, child-sized, carefully sewn. She brings a sacrifice, a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, a skin of wine, and she brings Samuel. The journey to Shiloh is quiet. Samuel is excited. He's a child. He doesn't fully understand what's happening. He knows he's going to the tabernacle. He knows this is important. But he doesn't know that this is goodbye. He walks alongside Hannah, holding her hand. He asks questions. Why are we bringing so much? Are we staying a long time? Will there be other children there? Hannah answers. Her voice is steady, calm. She doesn't let him see how much this is costing her. Elkanah walks beside them. He's quiet too. He knows what this means. He knows Hannah is about to give up the things she fought so hard to have, and he doesn't know what to say, so he just stays close. They arrive in Shiloh. The tabernacle is as bustling as always. Pilgrims, priests, sacrifices, the smell of roasting meat and burning incense. Hannah leads Samuel through the crowds. She's holding his hand tightly. Too tightly maybe, but she can't let go. Not yet. They find Eli, the same priest who thought she was drunk all those years ago. He's older now, grayer, more tired looking. Hannah approaches him, and she has to explain, has to remind him. Do you remember me? I'm the woman who stood here praying years ago. You thought I was drunk. You blessed me. You told me God would grant my request. Eli looks at her, at Samuel, and slowly he remembers. Hannah tells him, this is the boy I prayed for. God answered my prayer, and I made a vow. I told God that if he gave me a son, I would give him back, to serve in the tabernacle, for his whole life. So here he is. I'm lending him to the Lord. For as long as he lives, he belongs to God. Let's pause here and really think about this moment. You're Hannah. You're standing in front of the priest, holding the hand of your miracle child, the child you begged for, the child you prayed for with such desperation that a priest thought you were drunk, the child who ended your shame, proved your worth, silenced your critics, and you're giving him away. Not because you have to, not because someone's forcing you, but because you promised, because you made a vow in a moment of desperation, and now you're keeping it, even though it's tearing you apart. You look down at Samuel. He's looking up at Eli, curious, a little nervous. He doesn't understand. He thinks this is just another trip to the tabernacle. He thinks you're going to take him home afterward. But you're not. You kneel down. You hug him. You memorize the feel of his small body in your arms, the smell of his hair, the way he fits perfectly against you. And then you stand up. You let go of his hand, and you step back. You're not crying. Not yet. You're holding it together because you need to be strong for him. You need him to feel safe. You need him to think this is okay. But inside you're breaking. Elkanah makes the sacrifice, the bull, the flour, the wine, the proper rituals, and then they leave Samuel there, with Eli, with the priests, with the tabernacle. Hannah walks away, Elkanah beside her, and every step feels impossible. Every instinct is screaming at her to turn around, grab Samuel, and run, to take him home, to break the vow, to keep him. But she doesn't. She keeps walking, one foot in front of the other, until the tabernacle is behind them and Samuel is out of sight. What is the journey home like? Silent. Hannah's arms feel empty, wrong, like she's missing a limb. She keeps turning to check on Samuel to make sure he's keeping up, and then remembering he's not there. Her hands reach for him reflexively, to steady him on the uneven road, to brush his hair out of his eyes, to hold his hand. But there's nothing there, just air, just absence. The house, when they get back, is too quiet. She keeps listening for him, expecting to hear his voice calling for her, his footsteps padding across the floor, his laughter echoing through the rooms. But it's just silence. Well, not silence. Penina's children are still there, of course, still running around, still making noise, still filling the house with the chaos of childhood. But they're not Samuel. And the absence of him is louder than all of their chaos combined. Hannah goes about her daily routines. She grinds grain, she draws water, she weaves, she cooks. But it's all mechanical now, going through the motions, because the reason she wanted to do all of this, the reason she prayed so desperately for a child, is gone. She fulfilled the vow. She kept her promise. She did what she said she would do. But it doesn't make it hurt any less. The next year, they go back to Shiloh, the whole family, the annual pilgrimage, and Hannah brings something with her, a little robe. She made it herself, carefully measured, sewn with the kind of attention that only a mother brings to making clothes for her child, because Samuel is growing, and he needs new clothes. And even though she can't be with him every day, even though she can't tuck him in at night, or kiss his forehead or watch him play, she can still do this. She can still make sure he has a warm robe. They find Samuel at the tabernacle. He's learned the routines. He's helping the priests. He's part of the system now. And he seems okay, happy even. He's found his place. He's serving. He's learning. Hannah gives him the robe. She hugs him. She asks him how he's doing. She tries to memorize his face all over again because it's changed. He's gotten taller. His features are sharper. He's growing up. And she's missing it. But she doesn't say that. She just smiles. Tells him she's proud of him. Tells him she'll be back next year with another robe. And then she leaves. Again. Every year she does this. Every year she makes a new robe. Brings it to Shiloh. Sees her son for a few hours. And then goes home. It becomes a ritual. An annual reminder of the cost of answered prayer. The price of a kept vow. And every year, Eli sees Hannah, and he blesses her. He tells her, "May the Lord give you more children to replace the one you gave to him," which is kind, but also kind of tone deaf, because you can't replace a child. Samuel isn't replaceable. He's not a piece of furniture you can swap out for a newer model. But Eli means well. And God, apparently, agrees with the sentiment, because Hannah has more children, 3 more sons, 2 daughters. Her house fills up again. Her arms are no longer empty. But Samuel is still at Shiloh, growing up without her, becoming a priest, becoming a prophet, becoming someone she only sees once a year. Before all of that though, before the other children, before the annual robe deliveries, before the years of missing him, Hannah sings. After she leaves Samuel at the tabernacle, after the sacrifice is made and the vow is fulfilled, she composes a song, a prayer, a poem. And it's not what you'd expect from a woman who just gave up her child. It's not sad. It's not despairing. It's not a lament about loss and grief and the unbearable cost of motherhood. It's triumphant. She sings about God lifting up the poor, about him humbling the proud and exalting the humble, about how the barren woman has borne children while the woman with many has withered. She's singing about herself and about Penina and about every woman who ever made her feel worthless because she couldn't have children. She's singing, "Look what God did. Look how he reversed everything. I was nothing, and now I have a son in the service of the Lord. I was barren, and now God has blessed me beyond measure. It's a song about reversal, about God taking the impossible situation and flipping it, about how the things the world values, fertility, status, power, don't matter as much as faithfulness, as trust, as keeping your promises even when it costs you everything. She sings about strength, about how God gives strength to the weary, about how he protects his people, about how he judges the earth and gives power to his anointed. It's prophetic, it's powerful. It's one of the most beautiful prayers in the entire Old Testament. And it's coming from a woman who just walked away from her child. Why is she singing? Because she understands something that most people miss. She didn't lose Samuel, she gave him. There's a difference. She made a vow in her darkest moment. She promised God that if he gave her a son, she would give him back. And God held up his end. He gave her Samuel. He ended her barrenness. He silenced her critics. He proved she wasn't broken. And now she's holding up her end. She's giving Samuel back, not because she has to, not because someone's forcing her, but because she promised, and her word means something. And in doing that, in keeping the vow, in giving up the thing she wanted most, she's participating in something bigger than herself. Samuel isn't just her son anymore. He's going to become a prophet, a kingmaker, one of the most important figures in Israel's history, the man who will anoint David. Hannah doesn't know that yet. She just knows she made a promise and she kept it. But God knows, and God is already at work, turning her sacrifice into something that will shape a nation. So Hannah sings, not because she's not sad. She is. She's devastated. She's going to miss Samuel every single day for the rest of her life. But she's also grateful and faithful and convinced that God is working even in this, especially in this moment of loss. And she wants everyone to know it. So she sings about how God reverses fortunes, how he lifts up the lowly, how he gives strength to the weak, how he keeps his promises. And in singing it, she's reminding herself. She's declaring it to the world. She's making sure that everyone who hears her story understands. This is what faithfulness looks like. This is what it costs. And this is what it's worth. Hannah goes home. She lives her life. She has more children. She makes robes every year and brings them to Shiloh. And Samuel grows up in the tabernacle, serving, learning, hearing the voice of God in the middle of the night, when even Eli doesn't recognize it. He becomes the prophet who will end the era of judges and begin the era of kings, the man who will anoint Saul and then David, the bridge between two eras of Israel's history. And it all started with a barren woman praying desperately in a temple, making a vow she knew would break her heart, and then keeping it anyway. Because some promises are worth keeping, even when they cost you everything. Let's jump forward in time, and east, way east. We're leaving Israel entirely and heading to Persia, the Persian Empire, the superpower of the ancient world, the empire that stretches from India to Ethiopia, the place where decisions made in a palace can affect millions of people across thousands of miles. And we're going to talk about a Jewish orphan girl who somehow became queen. Her name was Esther. And her story starts with a beauty pageant that nobody asked for. First, some context. It's around 480 BCE. The Jews are in exile. They've been living in Persia for decades, scattered across the empire. Some have assimilated. Some have tried to maintain their identity. Most are just trying to survive in a foreign land that doesn't particularly care about them. Esther is one of these exiled Jews. She lives in Susa, the capital city, the administrative heart of the empire. She's an orphan. Her parents are dead. We don't know how. The text doesn't say. But she's being raised by her cousin Mordecai, who took her in when she had no one else. Mordecai works at the king's gate, which sounds unimpressive but is actually a significant position. The king's gate is where government business happens, where officials meet, where information flows. Mordecai is a low-level bureaucrat in the most powerful empire in the world. And Esther is just trying to live a quiet life in her cousin's house, staying out of trouble, keeping her head down. Then the king decides he needs a new wife. The king's name is Ahasuerus, or Xerxes, if you prefer the Greek version. He's the guy who tried to invade Greece and got his navy destroyed at Salamis. He's powerful, temperamental, and recently single. Why is he single? Because he threw a party. A 6-month-long party, actually, showing off his wealth to all the nobles and officials in the empire. And then, at the end of the 6 months, he threw another 7-day party for everyone in the citadel, because apparently 6 months wasn't enough. On the 7th day of the second party, when everyone was thoroughly drunk on royal wine, the king decided he wanted to show off his wife, Queen Vashti. He sent servants to bring her out so everyone could admire how beautiful she was. Vashti said no. Just no. I'm not coming. I'm not going to parade around in front of a bunch of drunk men so they can ogle me. Have some dignity. And Ahasuerus, drunk and embarrassed in front of his entire court, lost his mind. He consulted his advisors. What do we do about this? She defied me. In public. Everyone saw. And the advisors, probably also drunk, said, "This is terrible. If the queen can refuse the king, then all the women in the empire will start refusing their husbands. This is a threat to male authority everywhere. We have to make an example of her." So they banished Vashti, stripped her of her title, sent her away, and Ahasuerus was left without a queen. After the hangover wore off and reality set in, the king realized he might have overreacted. But it was too late. The decree had been issued. Vashti was gone, and now he needed a new queen. So his advisors came up with a plan, a kingdom-wide search for the most beautiful young women in the empire. Bring them all to the palace. Give them beauty treatments. Let the king spend time with each one. And then he can pick his favorite. It's like The Bachelor, but with more concubines and fewer roses. The decree goes out across the empire. All the beautiful young virgins are to be brought to the citadel of Susa, to the harem, to compete for the position of queen. And Esther, whether she wants to or not, is one of them. Let's be clear about what this means. This is not an honor. This is not a privilege. This is conscription. You're a young woman living your life, and suddenly soldiers show up and take you to the palace. You don't get a choice. You don't get to say no thanks. I'm good. You're beautiful, so you're coming with us. And once you're in the harem, you're there for life. Even if the king doesn't pick you, even if he never looks at you twice. You belong to the royal household now. You're a concubine. You'll never marry anyone else. You'll never have a normal life. So when the text says Esther was taken to the palace, that's what it means. Taken, not invited, not honored. Taken. Mordecai presumably tried to protect her. But what's a low-level bureaucrat going to do against a royal decree? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So Esther goes. She arrives at the palace, and it's overwhelming. The citadel of Susa is massive. Stone walls, elaborate courtyards, columns that stretch up to the sky, servants everywhere, guards everywhere, wealth everywhere. Esther, who grew up as an orphan in her cousin's modest house, is now living in a palace. But it's not a palace. It's a gilded cage. She's taken to the harem, the women's quarters, And this is where she'll live for the next year, with dozens, maybe hundreds, of other young women, all competing for the king's attention. The harem is run by a eunuch named Hegai. He's in charge of the women. He oversees their beauty treatments. He decides who goes to the king and when. And for some reason, Hegai likes Esther. The text says she wins his favor. He gives her special treatment, better cosmetics, better food, 7 maids to attend to her, the best rooms in the harem. Why? We don't know. Maybe she's kind to him. Maybe she's smart. Maybe she just has that quality that makes people want to help her. Whatever the reason, Hegai is Team Esther from day one. The beauty treatments begin. And by beauty treatments, we're not talking about a spa day. We're talking about a full year of preparation. 6 months with oil of myrrh. 6 months with perfumes and cosmetics. Every day for 12 months, Esther is bathed in expensive oils, rubbed with perfumes, massaged, groomed, perfected. Let's think about what this is like. You're Esther. You wake up every morning in a room that's more luxurious than anything you've ever experienced. Silk curtains imported from somewhere you've never heard of. Soft bedding stuffed with down that probably cost more than your cousin's entire house. Servants who bring you food you've never tasted before. Exotic fruits, spiced meats, delicacies from across the empire. But you're not free. You can't leave. You can't see your family. Mordecai walks by the courtyard of the harem every day just to check on you, but you can't talk to him. You can see him from a distance sometimes, pacing near the gate, looking up at the windows, but you can't go to him. You're isolated, cut off, surrounded by women who are all competing for the same thing you are, and you're being prepared, like a piece of merchandise, like a show animal being readied for auction. Your body is being transformed into something that will please the king. The oil of myrrh smells strong, cloying, sweet and resinous, and so overpowering that after a few weeks, you can taste it in the back of your throat. After 6 months, you can't stand it anymore. You dream about smelling like nothing, just clean water and plain air. But you keep going because you don't have a choice. The servants massage it into your skin. Every day, hours of it. Your skin is softer than it's ever been in your life. Unnaturally soft, like you're made of silk yourself. The perfumes come next. They're heavy, exotic, blends of ingredients you don't recognize. They cling to your skin, your hair, your clothes. You smell like wealth, like luxury, like something the king might want. And the whole time, you're thinking, what happens if he doesn't pick me? What happens if I go through all of this and he chooses someone else? You'll still be here, in the harem, for the rest of your life. Never a queen, never a wife, just another woman who wasn't quite good enough. But also, what happens if he does pick me? What happens if I become queen and then he finds out I'm Jewish? What happens if Mordecai's secret comes out? There's no good answer. Just 2 different kinds of uncertain futures. But Esther has something the other women don't. She has Mordecai's advice. Before she was taken, before the beauty treatment started, Mordecai told her something crucial. Don't tell anyone you're Jewish. This is important. Because Jews are a minority in Persia. They're tolerated mostly, but they're not exactly beloved. And if Esther wants to survive in the palace, if she wants any chance at becoming queen, she needs to blend in. So she doesn't tell anyone. Not the other women. Not Hegai. Not anyone. She hides her identity. She goes along with the beauty treatments. She eats the palace food, which probably isn't kosher, but what choice does she have? She participates in the rituals. She does what's expected, and she waits. Finally, after a full year of preparation, It's Esther's turn to go to the king. This is how it works. Each woman gets one night with the king. She goes to him in the evening, and in the morning, she goes back to a different part of the harem, the section for women who've already been with the king, and she waits to see if he calls for her again. If he does, she might become queen. If he doesn't, she's just another concubine, forgotten, set aside. Most women bring things with them when they go to the king: jewelry, expensive clothes, whatever they think will impress him. Esther brings nothing. Well, nothing except what Haggai advises her to bring. She trusts him. He knows the king. He knows what works. So she follows his advice, and she goes to the king. We don't know what happens that night. The text is discreet. It just says the king loved Esther more than all the other women. She won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he set the royal crown on her head and made her queen, just like that. The orphan girl from Mordecai's house, the Jewish exile who's been hiding her identity, the girl who was taken from her home and thrown into a beauty pageant she didn't want to enter. She's the queen of Persia now. Let's sit with how insane this is. Esther is ruling an empire. Or at least, she's married to the man who rules an empire. She's living in a palace. She has servants. She has wealth. She has power, or at least proximity to power. But she's still hiding who she is. She's Jewish, but no one knows. She's an exile, but no one knows. She's an orphan who was raised by her cousin, but no one knows. She's playing a role, the beautiful, gracious, perfect queen, and she can't let the mask slip, because if people find out she's Jewish, everything could fall apart. So she keeps the secret. She plays the part. She smiles and nods and does what's expected of a Persian queen. And Mordecai, still working at the king's gate, still checking on her from a distance, keeps reminding her, don't tell anyone, keep it hidden, stay safe. For a while, it works. Esther is queen. She's safe. The king loves her. Life in the palace is comfortable, but comfort doesn't last, because Mordecai, sitting at the king's gate, is about to make an enemy, a powerful enemy, a man named Haman, the king's right-hand man, the second most powerful person in the empire. And Haman is about to decide that all the Jews in Persia need to die, including Esther, if he ever finds out who she really is. So Esther is queen. Mordecai is still at the king's gate, doing his bureaucratic thing, and everything seems fine. Then Haman shows up. Haman is a nobleman, an Agagite, which means he's descended from the Amalekites, an ancient enemy of the Jews. The king promotes him, makes him his right-hand man, second in command of the entire Persian Empire, and the king issues a decree. Everyone has to bow down to Haman. Whenever he passes by, you drop to the ground. It's a sign of respect, of submission, of acknowledgement that Haman is very important. Everyone does it, except Mordecai. Mordecai refuses to bow. Day after day, Haman walks by the king's gate, and everyone prostrates themselves except this one Jewish bureaucrat who just stands there. The other officials notice. They ask Mordecai, "Why aren't you bowing? You're going to get in trouble. This is the law. You have to bow." And Mordecai tells them, "I'm a Jew. I don't bow to anyone except God," which is technically true. Jews have this whole thing about not worshipping other people or false gods. And maybe Mordecai sees bowing to Haman as a form of worship. Or maybe he just knows who Haman's ancestors were and refuses to honor the descendant of an enemy nation. Either way, he won't bow. Eventually, Haman notices, and he's furious. This low-level bureaucrat is defying him, in public, every single day. making him look weak, making him look like he can't enforce the king's decree. Haman wants revenge. But killing Mordecai isn't enough, because once Haman finds out Mordecai is Jewish, he decides, why stop at one Jew? Why not kill all of them? It's genocidal overreaction at its finest. One guy won't bow to you, so you decide to murder an entire ethnic group. Haman is not a stable individual. Haman goes to the king with a proposal. There's a certain group of people scattered throughout the empire. They have different customs. They don't follow the king's laws. They're a threat. It would be better for the kingdom if they were destroyed. Oh, and by the way, I'll personally pay 10,000 talents of silver into the royal treasury if you let me do this. Now, the king is not particularly attentive to the details of governance. He's more of a big picture guy, and Haman is his most trusted advisor. So when Haman says there's a problem, the king believes him. He doesn't ask which people. He doesn't investigate the claim. He doesn't consider the consequences. He just hands Haman his signet ring and says, do whatever you want. That's it. That's the level of thought that goes into authorizing genocide. A powerful man says there's a problem, and the king gives him carte blanche to solve it. Haman gets to work. He casts lots, they're called, to determine the best day to carry out the massacre. The lots fall on the 13th day of the 12th month, about 11 months away. Perfect. Plenty of time to plan. Haman drafts the decree. It's sent out across the empire in every language. On the 13th day of the 12th month, all the Jews in the Persian Empire are to be killed. Men, women, children, everyone. And whoever kills them gets to keep their property as plunder. It's official. It's sealed with the king's signet ring. It's irrevocable. Persian law doesn't get reversed. Once it's issued, it's happening. The decree goes out to every province. Couriers carry it to every corner of the empire. It's posted in public squares, read aloud, announced, and the Jews, scattered across Persia, hear it, and they panic. Mordecai hears the decree, and he tears his clothes. He puts on sackcloth and ashes, the traditional signs of mourning and grief, and he goes out into the city wailing, loudly, publicly, making a scene. Because what else is he going to do? His people are going to be slaughtered in 11 months, and there's nothing he can do about it. He's just a bureaucrat. He has no power, no influence, no way to stop this, except he has a cousin in the palace, a cousin who's also the queen, a cousin who technically has the king's ear, Esther. Word reaches Esther that Mordecai is outside the palace in sackcloth, wailing. She's distressed. She sends him clean clothes. Come on, put these on, stop making a scene. But Mordecai refuses. He sends word back. You need to understand what's happening. And he sends her a copy of the decree, the one ordering the extermination of all Jews. Esther reads it, and she realizes, this includes me. If anyone finds out I'm Jewish, I'm dead too. Mordecai sends another message. You have to go to the king. You have to plead for your people. You have to stop this. And Esther sends back, I can't. There's a law. No one can approach the king without being summoned. If you go to him uninvited, you die. Unless he extends his golden scepter, you're executed on the spot. And he hasn't called for me in 30 days. If I go to him now, I'll probably be killed. It's not an excuse. It's a real law. The Persian king is protected by layers of protocol and security. You don't just walk up to him, even if you're the queen. Mordecai sends one more message, and it's brutal. He tells her, don't think you'll escape just because you're in the palace. If you stay silent, deliverance will come from somewhere else, but you and your family will perish. And who knows? Maybe you were made queen for exactly this moment. It's a challenge, a call to action. and also a gentle reminder that hiding her identity won't save her. If she doesn't act, someone will eventually figure out she's Jewish, and then she'll die anyway. She might as well risk it now. At least she has a chance. Esther makes a decision. She sends word to Mordecai. Gather all the Jews in Susa. Fast for 3 days. Don't eat. Don't drink. I'll do the same. And then I'll go to the king. And if I perish, I perish. It's a death sentence, possibly. But it's also the only move she has. So they fast. Esther and her maids. Mordecai and the Jews in Susa. 3 days of no food, no water, just prayer and desperation. And on the 3rd day, Esther gets dressed. Let's talk about what this means. You're Esther. You've been living in the palace for years now, playing the role of the perfect Persian queen, keeping your identity hidden, staying safe. And now you're about to blow the whole thing up. You're going to walk into the throne room uninvited. You're going to risk immediate execution. And if you survive that, you're going to have to somehow convince the king to reverse an irrevocable decree that his most trusted advisor issued. The odds are not in your favor, but you're out of options. Your people are going to die. You're going to die, eventually, when someone figures out you're Jewish. You might as well go down fighting, so you put on your royal robes. Not just any robes. Your best ones. The ones that scream, "I am the queen and you should listen to me." Heavy fabric, embroidered with gold thread, the kind of thing that costs more than most people make in a lifetime. You arrange your hair. You apply cosmetics, the same expensive perfumes and oils you've been wearing for years now. You check your reflection in the polished bronze mirror. You look perfect, regal, untouchable. But your hands won't stop shaking. You take a breath, then another. You try to steady yourself. You've been preparing for this moment for 3 days. 3 days of fasting, 3 days of prayer, 3 days of working up the courage to do the one thing that might save your people or get you killed. And now it's time. You walk to the inner court, one step at a time. Through the palace corridors you've walked 100 times before, but they feel different now, longer. The walls seem to close in. Your robes feel heavier with each step. The guards see you coming. They don't stop you. You're the queen. But you can see the confusion on their faces. Where are you going? Why aren't you being summoned? You don't answer. You just keep walking. You reach the entrance to the inner court. You can see through to the throne room. The king is sitting on his throne, dealing with some matter of state. Officials and courtiers stand around him, the normal daily business of running an empire, and you're about to interrupt all of it. You step into the doorway, into the king's line of sight, and every eye in the room turns to you. The officials stop talking. The courtiers stare. This is not protocol. This is not how things are done. The queen does not just show up uninvited. The king looks at you, and for a terrible, stretched out moment, you don't know what he's going to do. Is he going to be angry? Is he going to call for the guards? Is this the moment you die? Your heart is hammering so hard you can hear it in your ears. And then, the king sees her, and instead of calling for her arrest, he extends the golden scepter. Esther breathes. She didn't realize she'd been holding her breath. She approaches. She touches the tip of the scepter, the traditional gesture of acceptance. And the king asks her, "What do you want? I'll give you anything." "Up to half my kingdom." It's hyperbole. He's not actually going to give her half the kingdom, but he's indicating he's open to her request, whatever it is. And Esther, instead of blurting out the whole thing right there, "Please save my people. Haman is trying to kill us. I'm Jewish. Help," does something brilliant. She invites him to a banquet. Why a banquet? Why not just tell him? Because Esther is smart. She knows you don't spring genocide and hidden identities on a king in the middle of his throne room with a bunch of officials listening. You do it privately, over food and wine, when he's relaxed, when he's in a good mood. So she says, "If it pleases you, come to a banquet I've prepared. You and Haman." The king agrees. Of course he does. His wife is throwing him a party. Why would he say no? So that day the king and Haman go to Esther's banquet. Picture the scene. Esther has set up a private feast, just the three of them. The king, Haman, and her. No servants hovering, no officials listening, just an intimate dinner. The food is elaborate. The wine is flowing. The king is pleased. Haman is thrilled. He's been specifically invited to a private banquet with the king and queen. He's never felt more important. And Esther is playing the gracious hostess, serving, smiling, waiting for the right moment. The king, halfway through the meal, asks her again, "What's your request? What do you want? I'll give it to you, up to half my kingdom." And Esther, instead of asking for what she really wants, says, "Come to another banquet tomorrow, you and Haman, and then I'll tell you." Why? Maybe she's not ready yet. Maybe the moment doesn't feel right. Maybe she's building tension, making the king more curious. Maybe she's just terrified and needs one more day to gather her courage. The king agrees. Fine. Another banquet tomorrow. And Haman leaves that night feeling like he's won the lottery. Haman goes home on top of the world. He's been invited to 2 private banquets with the king and queen. 2. Nobody else. Just him. He's clearly the most important person in the empire after the king himself. He gathers his family and friends and brags about it. "Look how honored I am. Look how favored. The queen herself invited me, twice." But then he remembers Mordecai, that Jewish bureaucrat who still refuses to bow, and suddenly all his joy evaporates. He tells his wife and friends, none of this means anything as long as that Jew Mordecai is still sitting at the king's gate, refusing to honor me. His wife and friends suggest a solution. Build a gallows 75 feet high. In the morning, ask the king for permission to hang Mordecai on it. Then you can go to the banquet happy. Haman loves this idea. He orders the gallows built immediately, 75 feet tall, visible from all over the city, a monument to his hatred. And he goes to bed that night, planning to ask the king, first thing in the morning, for permission to execute Mordecai. Meanwhile, the king can't sleep. And that's where things start to unravel for Haman. The king can't sleep. It's the night before Esther's second banquet. Haman is at home building a gallows. Esther is probably lying awake wondering if tomorrow she'll save her people or die trying. And the king is just restless. So he does what any insomniac monarch does. He asks someone to read to him, specifically to read the chronicles, the official records of his reign, which sounds like the most boring sleep aid ever invented. Ancient bureaucratic records, dry accounts of taxes and treaties and administrative decisions. But the servant starts reading, and he happens to land on an entry about Mordecai. Turns out years ago, Mordecai uncovered an assassination plot. 2 of the king's guards were planning to kill him. Mordecai heard about it, reported it to Esther, and Esther told the king. The plot was foiled. The guards were executed. Mordecai saved the king's life, and apparently no one ever rewarded him for it. The king sits up. Wait, this guy saved my life and we never honored him. We never gave him anything. The servants confirm. No, nothing. Mordecai got a thank you, and that was it. The king decides this needs to be fixed immediately. Morning comes. The king is in the courtyard, thinking about how to honor Mordecai. And who shows up? Haman. Haman has come early, eager to ask the king for permission to hang Mordecai on that 75-foot gallows he just built. He's rehearsed his pitch. He's ready. But before he can say anything, the king asks him a question. What should be done for someone the king wants to honor? And Haman, because Haman's ego is the size of the Persian Empire, assumes the king is talking about him. Obviously, who else would the king want to honor? He's the most important person in the kingdom. So Haman says, "Oh, you know, give him royal robes, the ones the king himself has worn. Put him on the king's own horse. Have one of the king's most noble officials lead him through the city proclaiming, 'This is what's done for someone the king honors.' Basically, throw him a parade. Make a big public spectacle of how amazing he is. The king loves this idea. Great. Do all of that. For Mordecai. Mordecai, the Jew who sits at the king's gate. The one Haman hates. The one Haman was about to ask permission to execute. Haman's face must have been priceless. So Haman has to do it. He has to get the royal robes. He has to get the king's horse. And he has to lead Mordecai, the man he despises, the man he built a gallows for, through the streets of Susa, announcing to everyone how honored Mordecai is. Imagine what this is like for Haman. You're walking through the city, leading a horse. On the horse is the one person you hate most in the world, and you're shouting over and over, "This is what's done for someone the king honors." Every step is humiliating. Every word tastes like ash. People are watching, cheering, celebrating Mordecai, and you're the one making it happen. It's the worst day of Haman's life. So far. When it's over, Haman goes home. He tells his wife and friends what happened, and they tell him, if Mordecai is Jewish, you're doomed. You can't win against him. This is just the beginning of your downfall, which is not what Haman wants to hear. But he doesn't have time to process it because the king's servants arrive to escort him to Esther's second banquet. So Haman goes, still reeling, still humiliated. But he goes. The banquet begins. The king, Haman, and Esther. Again, private, intimate. The wine is flowing. The food is excellent. The king is in a good mood. And once again, he asks Esther, "What's your petition? What do you want? I'll give it to you." This time, Esther tells him. She says, "If I found favor with you, grant me my life, and grant the lives of my people. We've been sold for destruction. If we'd just been sold as slaves, I would have kept quiet. But we're going to be annihilated." The king is confused. What are you talking about? Who would dare do this? And Esther, looking directly at Haman, says, "The enemy is this wicked Haman." Haman freezes. The king's face goes from confusion to fury. He stands up and storms out into the garden. He needs a moment to process this. His queen, the woman he loves, is under a death sentence because of Haman, his most trusted advisor. Haman, realizing he's about to die, throws himself on Esther's couch. He's begging for his life, pleading, groveling. The king comes back in and sees Haman on the couch with Esther, and he loses it. "Will you even assault the queen in my presence? In my own house?" Haman is not assaulting her. He's begging. But it doesn't matter. The king's interpretation is the only one that counts. The servants immediately cover Haman's face. It's a sign. This man is about to die. One of the servants mentions, almost casually, "Oh, by the way, there's a gallows at Haman's house, 75 feet tall. He built it for Mordecai. You know, the guy who saved your life." The king doesn't even hesitate. Hang him on it. So Haman is executed on the very gallows he built for Mordecai. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. The man who plotted genocide ends up dying on the instrument he prepared for someone else. And the king gives Haman's entire estate to Esther, his house, his wealth, his position, everything. Esther tells the king about her relationship to Mordecai. He's my cousin. He raised me. He's the one who uncovered the assassination plot years ago. The king takes off his signet ring, the one he gave to Haman, and gives it to Mordecai. Mordecai is now second in command, the position Haman just vacated. Everything has reversed, but there's still a problem. The decree, the one Haman issued, the one ordering all Jews to be killed on the 13th day of the 12th month. That's still in effect. Persian law doesn't get reversed. Once a decree is sealed with the king's ring, it's irrevocable. So Esther and Mordecai have to get creative. They can't cancel the decree, but they can issue another one. A new decree goes out. On the 13th day of the 12th month, the Jews are allowed to defend themselves. They can fight back. They can destroy anyone who attacks them. It's not a perfect solution. There's still going to be violence. But at least now the Jews have a chance. The decree goes out across the empire. And when the 13th day comes, the Jews defend themselves. And they win. Their enemies attack. And the Jews fight back. Victoriously. Decisively. In Susa alone, 500 men are killed, including Haman's 10 sons. Esther asks for their bodies to be hanged on display as a warning. The king agrees. Across the empire, the Jews survive, and they celebrate. They throw a festival, a feast, a commemoration of the day they were saved from annihilation. They call it Purim, after the the lots, that Haman cast to determine the day of their destruction. The day that was supposed to be their end became a day of victory, of survival, of reversal. And Esther remains queen. She uses her position to protect her people, to advocate for them, to make sure they're never threatened like this again. The orphan girl who was taken to a palace against her will, who hid her identity for years, who risked everything by walking uninvited into the king's throne room. She saved an entire people because she was brave enough to act when it mattered most. So there you have it. 4 women, 4 very different stories. Ruth, who chose loyalty over security and ended up in the lineage of kings. Deborah, who led a nation from under a palm tree and orchestrated one of Israel's greatest military victories. Hannah, who begged for a child, received one, and then gave him back to God because she kept her promises. And Esther, who went from orphan to queen and used her position to save her people from genocide. None of them were perfect. None of them had easy lives. None of them followed the path you'd expect, but they all showed up. They all made choices. They all did what needed to be done, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. And in doing so, they shaped history, quietly sometimes, dramatically other times, but always significantly. These are not sermons, just stories. Stories about women who lived a long time ago, in a world very different from ours, who faced impossible situations and somehow made it through. Sometimes with the help of God, sometimes with the help of a tent peg, sometimes with the help of sheer stubborn determination, and sometimes that's all you need. The stories are done. The barley has been harvested. The battles have been won. The children have been dedicated. The decrees have been written and rewritten. And if you're still listening, if you're still here, drifting somewhere between waking and sleeping, then I hope these stories gave you something. A bit of calm maybe, a bit of perspective, a reminder that people have been navigating impossible situations for thousands of years, and they survived, and so will you. Sleep well.